Alex Kennedy from HoopsHype.com. I'm sure you are ready for the NBA playoffs, Alex, because what we are seeing these last couple of weeks in the NBA regular season is not very good. The Lakers the other night egregiously trying to lose a game, and the Spurs would have none of it. The Suns are in a similar boat. I mean, it's starting to get bad down the stretch here, pal, as these playoffs can't get here fast enough.
Yeah, you're right about that. I'm tired of watching ugly basketball. I'm sure fans are as well. In some of these markets, you feel bad for the fans that are paying money to go see, a team try to lose. You mentioned Phoenix and LA. I think those are probably two of the big ones right now. We've talked about everything LA has on the line here, because if they lose their, first overall pick, that's top 3 protected, they lose their 2019 pick too. So, certainly they want to lose games and increase their lottery odds. But, yeah, it's unfortunate. It's not a good product for television, not a good product in person. I'm excited for the playoffs, though, because, hopefully we'll get some good first-round matchups.
Yeah, I'm excited with the playoffs, too, and a lot of it is because of what we're seeing down the stretch here. The NBA stepped in on teams sitting star players out. Do they have a bigger problem, though, with – look, the Sixers did what they did. We understand what they did. They didn't have a very good roster. The Lakers are sitting capable players out when healthy. That seems to be a big problem.
Yeah, and I think that's something that the NBA will want to address. It's unfortunate that, it's happening. Teams can justify it because they're saying, we're out of the playoff picture anyway. We want to play our young guys. In the Lakers case, it makes even more sense because you have Magic Johnson and Rob Pelinka now in the front office. So you can say, we have a new front office. We want to evaluate the kind of guys that we have, see who's going to be a long-term fit. So there are ways to justify it, but there's no question that, they're definitely resting, veterans that may help them win games. When you talk about Nick Young and Timothy Mozgov and guys like that, they traded away Lou Williams at the deadline. So, I think it's something the NBA does need to address. But this has been happening for a long time now. I think usually the NBA kind of, turns their turns away from it. They kind of let it happen. But when it's happening on national, televised games, when it's happening in a big market like Los Angeles with the Lakers, that's when the league tends to get involved. So I wouldn't be surprised if the NBA offered some kind of, solution or warn teams about maybe consequences that could happen if they continue to do this. But, again, we talked about it before. The NBA doesn't really want to meddle too much with rotations and coach decisions because that's a slippery slope. But, blatant tanking like this where, you have two teams that are playing that both want to lose the game, you have to do something about that.
The other night, it wasn't even the fact that they were looking at young guys. Late in that game, they have a lead, and it was almost like Walton was benching the players that were helping them get that lead to go to guys like Meta World Peace and Nwaba, who's a D-League guy. Basically, he was trying to find the worst 5 players he could put on the floor, and it was almost as if Greg Popovich said, I am not letting you lose this game.
Yeah, exactly. There's certainly times where the rotations are questionable, and that's the front office and the coaching staff, putting these players in position to fail. And I think that's one thing that Doc Rivers pointed out, and I think that's important. Players don't tank. It's the front office, it's the coaches. Those are the people that are tanking. Every time a player is on the floor, they're trying their hardest because first of all, they are playing for themselves a lot of times. You're trying to get a good contract. You're trying to increase your value. You're trying to show what you can do so that if you're not on that team next year, then there's interest in you elsewhere. And players have no incentive to tank. Why help a team land a top pick, and land a guy that could replace you? So I think that's one thing that, fans sometimes, misunderstand. I think in Philadelphia, there's a pretty good idea and understanding of it. But in Los Angeles, I've seen a lot of fans criticize players for tanking, but that's never really the case. It is, the coaches who are putting in lesser players or the front office who are resting guys and trading guys. So, yeah, it's definitely something that needs to be addressed. there's been a few teams this year that have done it pretty blatantly. And as we saw with Philadelphia, you can kind of do it behind the scenes. Even the Warriors a few years ago tanked to make sure they could keep their pick. It doesn't get talked about an awful lot, but they did tank a few years ago before they were this contender. But when it's blatant and you're one of the worst teams in the NBA and you're putting Meta World Peace in over contributors, that's something that is completely different.
I'm glad you brought that up. Alex Kennedy, hoopshype.com, about the players not tanking. This is the teams that are doing their darndest, the coaches, to try to lose games. And I know it sounds crazy in Philadelphia, especially for someone like me who has been a proponent of what the Sixers have done. Let me ask you about the Sixers. They're the fourth worst team in the league. They are now tied with Orlando. And I know you being in Orlando probably have a pretty good handle on what this means. If those two teams tie and the Lakers finish in third, the Lakers would then have basically less than a 50% chance to finish in the top three. There's a pretty good chance now, because of where Philadelphia is tied with Orlando and where the Lakers are, that Philly could now end up with 2 picks. That was looking less and less likely until recently.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the dream scenario for the Sixers, obviously. It's funny because Brooklyn has been winning some games lately out of nowhere.
They pounded the Sixers the other night.
Yeah, they've been playing good basketball, and that's kind of been surprising because all season long they weren't. And now you have Orlando that is winning games. Not as many as Brooklyn. They haven't been as successful, but they've won a few games here and there. And I've seen fans here in Orlando that are furious after every single win. And that's another byproduct of this whole tanking and incentivizing tanking, is you have fans furious and angry and tweeting after wins. So that's always interesting to see. But yeah, I mean, I think that the scenario for Philadelphia getting 2 top picks is looking, more likely. And that would be amazing for this team because you already have a very talented young core there. Obviously, the goal is to be able to add the point guard of the future, whether that's Markelle Fultz, whether that's Lonzo Ball, one of those kind of guys. And then if you can get another top pick and add a wing player like a Josh Jackson or a Jason Tatum or one of these other guys, this team suddenly becomes very scary because I think, honestly, this is one of the best draft classes we've seen in quite some time. And I know we hear that a lot. We hear that in a lot of different years where people kind of overrate the draft classes. But, there are guys in this draft class that could go, 8, 9, 10 that we'd typically be talking about as a top 3 pick just because the top prospects all have superstar potential and are that good.
Alex Kennedy with us. Alex, I'll leave you with this. This morning I was listening to Jeff Van Gundy, and he said something that really was like, wow, did he just say that? And it wasn't – he was right about it. And the comment was that the Warriors don't need Kevin Durant to win. I mean, he's scheduled to come back, and they've been playing really well. But think about that comment. You don't need Kevin Durant to win. That tells you that this team is poised to make another run.
Yeah, I mean, I said the same thing the other day in a radio interview, and I kind of – was shocked by it, but it was right after they had the win over the Spurs. How many teams could take a top 3 player, top 5 player, a guy that's won MVP off their roster and just dominate? Without Kevin Durant, they're still not only winning games, they've won 13 straight, they're winning by an average margin of 15 points per game. And it seems like they're playing like they did last year. They're kind of reverting to Steph Curry taking over games and knocking down more threes. He's been fantastic lately. I want to say he's shooting 57% from 3. His numbers are way up. Klay Thompson's playing better. And you've seen that guys like Draymond Green and David West and some of these other guys that, have lesser roles when Kevin Durant is out there are stepping back up and playing great basketball. So there's no other team where you could remove their top player and they would still be a top team that wins 13 straight games. Take LeBron James off the Cavaliers, and they're in trouble. Take Kawhi Leonard off the San Antonio Spurs, they're in trouble. Certainly the 2 MVP candidates that everyone's talking about, Russell Westbrook and James Harden, their teams are completely different if they're not on the team. But this Warriors team is so good that even without Kevin Durant, if he didn't play another game this season, they're still the favorite to win the NBA championship because last year they won 73 games. They have a system that works. They have guys that have excellent chemistry that fit well together. You know, Durant obviously helps them so much. He makes them an even bigger favorite because of what he's able to do on the offensive end, because he's so good at switching defensively, because he's a good leader. You know, but there's no question that this Warriors team would still be the favorite even if Durant wasn't on that roster. I'm curious to see what happens when he comes back, just because, you know, there's always the question about stepping on toes, and if they struggle, is he going to get the blame? Fortunately, you know, he's an unselfish guy, so I can't see him, you know, having too much trouble, you know, getting reacclimated. But, yeah, this Warriors team is just ridiculous.
Playoffs, when we talk next week to Alex, the playoffs will be starting, and we already got a couple matchups in the West: Houston, Oklahoma City, San Antonio, and Memphis. We know Golden State's the one, and they're all locked in. I can't wait to start previewing those matchups with Alex Kennedy from hoopshype.com next week on the show. Take care, pal. Have a good weekend.
Thanks a lot. Take care.